Good morning, Westville, Indiana. And welcome to our salute to veterans. So happy all of you decided to show up on this beautiful Saturday morning at our beautiful campus here in Westville. And I want to make something perfectly clear just right from the very beginning. This campus is not closing. We are continuing to invest in this. You see our new electronic sign right here. We have new labs. We have our new esports facility. So we are going to continue to invest in this place and continue to adjust and fit where the economy is going, as well as what the needs of our communities are. So that's going to continue to evolve. Don't believe anybody that tells you, oh, they're closing, they don't care. That's a bunch of, I won't use any military terms, but BS. But anyway, so I couldn't be happier than to be here with all of you. I do want to recognize we have some elected officials with us. I see Commissioner Rich Mrozinski, if you would stand. You guys all stand. And I see our mayor-elect here, Angie Nelson-Deitch, and Councilman Don Prince-Malinsky, and also State Senator Mike Wahachik and State Representative Jim Pressel. I think I got them all. Is there anything I missed? Well, thank you for coming. It just shows your dedication to your job, and we are so proud of all of you for showing up here this morning. So we're going to start with a little bit of an official thing, right? So would you please stand for the presentation of the colors? This is the Michigan City Area Schools Marine Junior Art OTC.
Letter, march. Present colors.
All right, and if we could say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry colors. Ready, cut, right turn, march. Forward, march.
Thank you, and a little round of applause for these fine young men and women. All right, so the other thing, persons I want to recognize this morning is this, on behalf of, yeah, you can sit down, please, if you like. Thank you. First off, Chancellor Tom Keon couldn't be here this morning. However, we do have our Provost and Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, Dr. Chris Holford. And he is the big driver on this campus. He started on this campus as an associate professor? Assistant professor. And so he's big on biology and other things, and he has really been a very positive driver for this place. So we're lucky to have him. So next I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, who I have known for, it's got to be pushing 30 years now. So he was a veteran. He's a veteran from back in the U.S. Air Force, served 4 years in the Air Force, and the last 2 years in Vietnam and Okinawa, and then also in the later in the United States Army Reserve for 3 years, and then on into as our county sheriff. well, first before county sheriff, he got involved with the county sheriff's department. So in there for 32 years. You probably read this off the screen, but 32 years. And then the last 8 years, he was the sheriff in town. So got to know him very well then, and then more so as state senator for another 8 years. No, it was 10 years. 10 years as state senator. And I routinely worked across the aisle to make things happen that is good for our state. And then more recently, he's the president of the LaPorte Community School Board. So please give a warm welcome for retired state senator Jim Arnold. Sure.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Let me get started here. Lauren, can you hear me okay? Do you listen to me today? You don't listen too much at home. Well, first of all, I'm going to thank you for the opportunity of being here today. Let me get my notes straight. And you know, it's also an honor for me to be here in the Dworkin Center. Chancellor Dworkin and his wife Nancy and Laura and I became very good friends over the years and done a little bit of traveling together to Cincinnati ball games. He's a big Cincinnati fan. And so I'm honored to sit here in his namesake today and put on a little program. But I want to thank Purdue Northwest for offering me the opportunity to come here and talk today. I want to special gratitude to Don Babcock, as he alluded to, probably going on 30 years now. We actually met for the first time and we had a chance to talk on a bus going to the Indianapolis Colts games. Remember that, Don?
That's right.
And you were working for another company at that time. You remember the name of it?
Lights are still on.
Yeah. And I made a suggestion about some situations coming up, and you took their advice, and then we had the Citizen Advisory Panel that you put together.
That's a great advice.
So thank you so much. And of all the opportunities I've had to put on programs and speak to groups throughout the years, you know, I never fail to mention the person that's always been right there at my side, pushing me, shaking her head, just saying, I can't believe it, you know, and even coughing once in a while. My wife, Lauren, who has been going 33 years. And of course, the reason we're here today, the veterans, the ones we honor. And before we get to that, Major McGrath, we go back a number of years as well. You've had me at different functions, the opportunity to speak, and I'm still amazed at the honors you continue to pile up and the program that you establish. It just reflects such great light upon our community, the job that you're doing, and the young officers there. So thank you so much for the ROTC. So I'll bring us to why we're assembled here today. A special gratitude to my fellow veterans. It's always an honor to be able to spend some time with you and talk about the different things, especially like Jeff Deitch, it's retired from the U.S. Army, and Jeff and I used to sit down and swap tails, and of course I was Air Force and he was Army, and he understood that I was a little bit smarter than him. You know, after serving his time in the Air Force. But that's why we're assembled here today, to pay tribute to those people, the United States veterans. The 2 days of the year that we have an opportunity to represent people are Memorial Day, when we pay honor those people that gave the ultimate sacrifice, that made the supreme sacrifice, the people that went off and didn't return, and Veterans Day, the day we honor all those people that have served. And my sincere thank you from the bottom of my heart as a fellow veteran for the service that you folk provided to not only our community, our state, but our nation. God bless each and every one of you. I'm honored to tell you that I was very fortunate in life. I was raised by a World War II veteran. My father was a Pacific veteran, Pacific Theater from the United States Navy. And you know, he served 4 years in the United States Navy. He came back home and to Michigan City and raised a crowd. Am I bothering the camera? Should I not move? Want me to just stand here? Okay, I'm sorry. Served in the United States Navy in the Pacific Theater, but very little was ever discussed at home about what my father saw. I have pictures in the scrapbook of Iwo Jima, Saipan, Tinian, some of the things we heard about as children, we read about, but was never discussed at home unless I would ask a question. I had an uncle that was on Diamond Head when Pearl Harbor was bombed. didn't do anything except watch the Japanese planes. They strafed Pearl Harbor, went back out over the ocean. I had another uncle by the name of Jimmy, who was my uncle that I'm named after. I was named after him because on July 25th, everybody remember this now, July 25th, 1944, the day I was born, my uncle was in the infantry in the army in France, was hit by shrapnel, from German shrapnel that hit a tank, and he was completely laid open, and they said that he was never going to make it. He sent my grandmother a note and said, Jimmy's not going to make it. But he did. He made it, went on to become a productive individual, lived in LaPorte County for years and years and years, retired from Teledyne Casting and so forth. So I have a little bit of a tie-in about the World War II and about the veterans. But I've always considered myself extremely lucky because of the strong values towards God and country and family that were instilled in me by my family and by my upbringing. My father was a very, very dedicated and committed individual. And I learned early on, probably not like a lot of you folks, what my dad always said what he meant, and he meant what he said. And I learned that. And I think that's one of the missing traits that we're seeing in our society today. Those same values that were instilled in me are evident in you as well, or you wouldn't be here today. And for that, I'm very deeply appreciative that I've had that fortune to have that upbringing. 105 years ago today, the armistice was signed in a little boxcar in France on the 11th day, 11th hour, 11th day, 11th month. World War I was over. And that was the war to end all wars. Never to happen again. 20 years later, in 1938, Congress established Veterans Day. What a joyous occasion that was. But just 1 year later, Germany invaded Poland, and the seeds of World War II were planted. Will there ever be an end to it? I don't know. That's a question you have to answer. We can only hope. But it seems to go on and on. Somewhere in this world, at one time, there was a mother that once said, I dream of the day when I can give birth to a child that will someday look up to me and said, Mommy, what was war? Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. The most constant sound that reverberates through our world today, the most constant sound over everything that we hear is the constant beating of war drums. The constant beating of war drums. Today we honor all our nation's great history of those that placed their lives on hold. And for you, some of you that don't remember, some of us left in the prime of our lives and served. We went to basic training, went to our specialized training, and then went to our duty assignments to serve in the proudest organization ever conceived by mankind, that of the United States military, to preserve and protect the way of life that we've been accustomed to. And they ask very little in return. Just remember is all they've asked. Over 41 million individuals have served in our military over our nation's great history. 16 plus million are still alive today in our country. And we've lost over 1.2 million lives that have been given in defense of our country. Throughout the history of mankind, wars have been fought for many reasons. What countries fight over differs from war to war. The methods and strategies used in wars differ from war to war. Weapons that are used differ from war to war. But the basic premise of war never changes. Men and women die. Men and women die because of wars. That's what it's all about. And the cycle goes on and on and on. Will it ever end? We can only hope and pray. I worked in the criminal justice field in LaPorte County for 36 years. And I saw what was great about this nation. I see our educational system every day on the school board. and I see what is great about this nation. I see the educational opportunities that are available to everyone in this country today. And I see what is great about this nation. I see the freedom to worship as one feels in this nation. And I see what is great about this nation. And as I look out at you folks assembled here today, God, I see what is great about this nation. I strongly feel that if a poll were taken today among the veterans, because of what you've witnessed and what you've seen, if the poll was taken, you would probably be the first ones to stand up and speak out against war because of the devastation that it causes. But on the other hand, I venture to say that if the poll was taken today, you would be the first ones in line to volunteer your services once again. You always have and always will. In closing, I want to emphasize that there's always been a concern about the younger people in our community today. Will they ever step up if we need it? We see our kids walking down the street, we criticize their dress, we criticize their music, we criticize everything about the way they act. Hey, what's going to happen in this world today? Well, I want to submit this to you. I have no doubts, if the need arises, that the youth in our country today will step up once again. They always have, and they always will. And I'm firmly in belief that that will happen. And why? It's because of the path that has been forged by the greatest generation that we followed, and by the path that you as veterans have made as well. And they will follow that path if the need arises. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. When I was sheriff, I had a poem I came across early on, and I loved it so much, I took that poem and printed it off, and I kept it on my desk the entire time I was sheriff. And I still have it today, and I keep it in a drawer right next to my computer. And I'd like to take just a moment to read this poem to you. It's called The Man in the Glass. And this is a poem that I have never forgotten, and a poem that I still today rely on. And it goes like this. When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and ask yourself and see what the man has to say. For it isn't your father, your mother, or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. You may be like Jack Horner and chisel a plum and think you're a wonderful guy, but the man in the glass says you're only a bum if you can't look him straight in the eye. He's the fellow to please, never mind all the rest, for he's with you clear to the end. And you've passed your most dangerous and difficult test if the man in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get back pats as you pass. But your final reward will be headache and tears if you've cheated a man in the glass. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you today to honor our veterans. God bless our veterans. I want to thank you so much to Mr. Babcock, to Purdue Northwest for having enough interest to organize this Veterans Day. And I want you to know that I am extremely honored to have the opportunity to spend this morning with you folks here in this breakfast. God bless our veterans, each and every one of you. God bless each and every one of you in this audience today. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator, Sheriff. Definitely a man you can look in the eye because you know something is really there. I've learned so much from this man over the years, and he's right. On a little bus trip we were taking, we had, the company I was with had stumbled and kind of fell a little bit over some issues in LaPorte County. And Jim at the time, he's sitting next to me on the bus, and says, Don, you guys have got to get out in front of this stuff. You can't just come in and just drop some big changes and expect everybody to get on board with you. You have to build those relationships and build your credibility and hang in there with them. And when it gets tough, you don't run away. You stand up and make your case. And so I've always treasured his counsel. And he was, when the thing, Tony Sindone suggested we reinvigorate Veterans Day here. And we're looking, well, we need a keynote speaker, and he was at the very top of the list. So thank you so much. It was very inspiring, and I got to get a copy of your poem, so that'd be great. So thank you very much. If we could have the colors again, please, and then I'll bring up Tony to make some comments. And as far as recognitions also, I know he was going to go over some of the history, and maybe we'll get another recap. So let's bring the colors up first, if you don't mind. Please, everybody stand.
Over, arch. Right side, arch. Present colors.
And thank you. Tony, you want to make some comments here? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don.
Carry colors. Ready, cut. Left side, arch.
Thank you. Please be seated. Yes, Don, thank you very much. And again, another thank you to Senator Jim Arnold. That were inspiring words, and I too want a copy of that poem. It sounded like something that I often tell my students, look the person in the eye that you're facing, and if you can be proud of that person, you've done really well in your life. So thank you very much for that. I do have a quote from John McCain. Some people might remember who he was. Whatever gains are secured, it is the loss the veteran remembers most keenly. Only a fool or a fraud sentimentalizes the merciless reality of war. Speaks directly to what Jim was talking about before. In 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, an armistice or temporary cessation of the hostilities was declared between the Allied nations and Germany in World War I, then known as the Great War, later known as the War to End All Wars. How did that work out? The Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, marking the official end of World War I. Nonetheless, the armistice date of November 11th, 1918 remained in the public imagination as the date that marked the end of the conflict. 1 year later, on November 1919, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day. The day's observation included parades and public gatherings, as well as a brief pause in business and school activities at 11 a.m. Almost made it to the exact time to this day. On November 11th, 1921, an unidentified American soldier killed in that war was buried at Arlington National Cemetery near Washington, D.C. On the same day, the previous year, unidentified soldiers were laid to rest at Westminster Abbey in London and the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. On June 4th, 1926, Congress passed a resolution that, quote, "the recurring anniversary of November 11th, 1918 should be commemorated with thanksgiving and prayer and exercises designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and mutual understanding between nations," unquote. And that the president should be an annual proclamation calling for the observance of Armistice Day. By that time, 27 state legislatures had made November 11th a legal holiday. An act approved May 13th, 1938, made November 11th a legal federal holiday dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. You know, in actuality, there are no U.S. national holidays because the states retain the right to designate their own. And the government can only designate holidays for federal employees and for District of Columbia. In practice, however, the states almost always follow the federal lead. It wasn't until 1954, year of my birth, that's how old I am, after lobbying efforts by veterans service organizations, the 83rd U.S. Congress amended the 1938 Act that had made Armistice Day a holiday, striking the word armistice in favor of veterans. President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the legislation on June 1st, 1954. From then on, November 11th became a day to honor American veterans of all wars. Just a little bit of a history lesson since this is an academic institution. Right now, I have the honor of stating names that have been submitted to us of area veterans. I will state some of the names, and our veteran coordinator, the student veteran coordinator, Anthony Pilato, will mention names thereafter. Stephen Alexander, Larry Ambrose, Roger Bernard, Christopher Bernard, Joshua Birchfield, Albert Castagnetta, Edward Castagnetta. I'm going to pause here for a second. The previous two names were my uncles. I added them to the list. They were World War II veterans. My Uncle Albert served in the Big Red War on Okinawa, and my Uncle Eddie, my godfather, served in the Philippine Islands under General MacArthur. He was not captured. He fought with the partisans. We talk about PTSDs today. Back then they called it battle fatigue. My Uncle Eddie did die of his injuries, but years later. Jeff Deutsch, Takesha Dockery, Roy Evans, Joseph Fry, Mark Gurley, William Greachin, Eugene Greachin, Adam J. Hill, Anthony Pallotta, and Senator Jim Arnold.
Nathan L. Goodman, Dale Luther, Jonathan Merrick, Christopher Miller, Chuck Peters, Theodore Roosevelt Hollick, Michael Spalchero, Gilbert Scherer, Jacob Scherer, Dr. Kim Sipes, Gene Simmons, Anthony Sindone, Steve Vukusik, James W. Ambrose, Donald Wilson Jr., Lane Woodard, Ed Lozano, Eric Bovard, Susan Bovard, George Watkins, Henry Sawa, Trevor Johnston, Wayne Hopkins, Crystal Sobos, Don Babcock Sr., Joe Fry, Robert Babcock, James Babcock, Ben Bauman, Vincent Crossley, Joshua Buggs. James Stucker, Robert Stucker, Kevin Hurley.
Please rise.
Colors. Left turn, march. Color guard, hold. Present. Colors.
May we have a moment of silence for those who have passed. Thank you. Please remain standing as we retire the colors.
Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Right turn. March. Forward. March. Hold. Forward. Colors.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. We sure appreciate all of our veterans. We may not have mentioned everybody's name, but we do appreciate all of your service. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.